I am 73 years old, and I need to tell you something most people won't say out loud. Almost everything you've been taught about aging, success, and having time is wrong. Not slightly wrong, completely wrong. And the most uncomfortable part is this. The people who were supposed to prepare you for this reality, parents, teachers, society itself, either didn't know the truth or were too afraid to admit it. I believed the same story for most of my life. I followed the script exactly as it was handed to me. Work hard, build a career, accumulate respect, delay the rest. By my early 50s, I had what looked like a finished life from the outside. A stable career, a home, professional recognition. I thought I had won. Then, at 52, my body interrupted the illusion. My heart failed in the middle of an ordinary workday. One moment, I was reviewing numbers in a conference room. The next, I was waking up in a hospital bed with machines keeping me alive and my wife standing there in shock. The doctors called me lucky. At the time, that word felt insulting. But lying there, unable to move, forced to think, I realized they were right. Because that moment exposed something terrifying. I hadn't been living consciously. I had been functioning, moving from obligation to obligation, doing what was expected, chasing approval, waiting for a future that was never guaranteed. If I had died that day, what would I have truly left behind? Not memories, not presence, not depth. Just possessions and professional titles that would dissolve faster than anyone admits. This is where the inner conflict begins. The space between the life you think you're rebuilding and the life you actually living. Most people tell themselves the same comforting lie. I'll do it later. Later, when things calm down. Later, when the money is better. Later, when responsibilities ease. I watched decades disappear under that logic. People in their 20s and 30s swear they have time. People in their 40s still believe it. And then something breaks, a body, a relationship, a moment, and suddenly time stops feeling infinite. What no one tells you early enough is that life does not pause to let you catch up. The finish line keeps moving. Every achievement creates a new expectation. Every milestone unlocks a heavier burden. You climb and climb, convinced the view at the top will make it worth it, only to realize you leaned your ladder against the wrong wall, and there is no rewind. Time does not negotiate. Here is one of the most dangerous myths we pass down, that success will eventually feel like enough. I believed this for decades. I reached goals I once thought would complete me. Promotions, stability, recognition, and every time, the satisfaction lasted only briefly before fading into restlessness. 48 hours of relief, then the next chase began. More status, more security, more proof that I mattered. It never ended. I watched friends do the same. One of them built a business that everyone admired. He worked endlessly, always promising himself he would slow down next year. Next year never arrived. He suffered a stroke at 68. At his funeral, his son stood up and said something I'll never forget. His father was admired by many, but known by few. That is the kind of sentence that follows you into old age. When you get quiet enough, you realize regrets don't come from failures. They come from absence. The conversations you postponed, the places you never went, the words you didn't say. I don't lose sleep over mistakes in my career. I lose sleep over the experiences I delayed until they disappeared. A trip I kept rescheduling. A relationship with my brother that eroded while I stayed busy. Evenings with my children traded for late meetings that no one remembers now. You assume the people you love will always be there. They won't. My father died suddenly when I was 45. I thought we had time to repair things once life slowed down. Life never slowed down. He was gone within hours. What haunts you in one big moment? It's the hundreds of small moments you ignored because you were tired, distracted, or convinced there would be another chance. After my heart attack, I changed. not dramatically, but deliberately. I stepped back from what drained me and leaned into what mattered. I began protecting my time like it was fragile, because it is. Over the last 21 years, I learned that fulfillment is embarrassingly simple. Meaningful work, real connection, presence, and experiences that don't wait for permission. I know how this sounds. When I was younger, I would have dismissed it as unrealistic. I have responsibilities, I would say. And you do. But responsibility should never become an excuse to abandon your life. Ask yourself something uncomfortable. If today were your last day, would you feel at peace with how you've lived so far? Not impressed, not validated, at peace. If the answer is no, then the inner conflict is calling your attention to something you've been avoiding. You are trading your one life for obligations that will not remember you. And the scariest part is how easy it is to keep doing that without ever noticing until time forces you to. Every morning I wake up with the quiet awareness that I am living on borrowed time. That awareness doesn't create fear anymore. It creates clarity. Most people don't feel this until much later, if at all. When you're young, time feels abstract. You assume your body will always cooperate. You assume opportunities will always repeat themselves. You assume people will always be there when you're ready. That assumption shapes how carelessly you spend your days. I see it now in my grandchildren and in people everywhere. They are anxious, overworked, chasing outcomes they don't fully understand, convinced their stress is temporary and necessary. They believe their situation is different from everyone who came before them. I believe that too. The truth is, most lives follow the same patterns, just with different decorations. That's why the inner conflict exists, to interrupt that pattern before it hardens. When you finally understand that time is finite, your priorities reorganize themselves without effort. You stop pretending you'll fix things later. You stop numbing yourself with distractions. You stop postponing conversations that matter. You start seeing each day as something you spend, not something you own. The illusion of endless time is what allows people to tolerate lives they don't actually want. Once that illusion cracks, everything changes. You begin choosing depth over approval. You begin choosing presence over productivity theater. You begin asking harder questions about how you're living, not just how successful you look. I've learned that meaning doesn't arrive through accumulation. It arrives through attention, through noticing, through being fully where you are with the people who matter. I have very little interest now in impressing anyone. That hunger fades when you realize how temporary applause really is. What remains is connection, forgiveness, curiosity, and courage. The courage to stop living reactively. You don't need to wait for a crisis to learn this. You don't need a hospital bed to wake you up. But most people do. That's the tragedy. They wait until their body, or a loss, or time itself forces the lesson. You still have a choice before that happens. And choices compound faster than regret. You can continue living on default, or you can interrupt the cycle now. Not by quitting everything or running away, but by becoming intentional, by choosing where your energy goes, by protecting your time, by understanding that saying yes to one thing always means saying no to something else, often something more important. Life becomes simpler when you stop pretending it's infinite. If I could speak directly to my younger self, I wouldn't lecture him about success or warn him about failure. I would tell him to stop waiting. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for conditions to be perfect. They never are. I would tell him to stop sacrificing his health for validation. Stop confusing busyness with purpose. And stop delaying joy as if it were irresponsible. I would tell him to call his parents more often, not because he owes them, but because time quietly erases chances. I would tell him to take the trips that feel impractical, to pursue the interests that don't come with applause, and to say no without guilt to obligations that drain his spirit. Most of all, I would tell him this. Life doesn't begin later. Later is a story people tell themselves to feel safe. Real life is happening now, whether you're present for it or not. I am 73 years old. If I'm fortunate, I may have 10 or 15 more years. Maybe less. And I'm at peace with that, not because I achieved everything, but because I stopped postponing what mattered. These years have been the richest of my life. Not financially, emotionally, relationally, spiritually. I travel without rushing. I sit with people without checking the time. I say what needs to be said. I forgive faster. I appreciate ordinary moments because I know how quickly they disappear. The irony is undeniable. When you finally understand that time is limited, you start living fully. You stop wasting energy on status games. You stop chasing hollow definitions of success. You stop delaying happiness in exchange for an imaginary future. You begin creating meaning instead of waiting for it. This is the choice in front of you right now. Continue as you are, busy, distracted, postponing life while telling yourself you'll get to it eventually. Or pause. Look honestly at how you're spending your days. Ask yourself whether the life you're living matches the life you believe in. No one can make this decision for you. But I can tell you this with certainty. You do not want to wake up decades from now wishing you had paid attention sooner. Learn from those who have already lived the consequences. Let the inner conflict be the reminder that time is not abundant, it is precious. Stop waiting for someday. Someday is not in the future. It is today. It always has been.